fuckers don't, if fuckers that don't get what the fucking void is all about.
What is the void? I've been asked that question so many times now. And every time I go to answer it, I have to think a little bit more because it's undefinable. You know, I can define what it is for me, but I can't define what it is for you. You know, it's many lifters can relate to, you know, digging your hands into the chalk, and there's a state of being when you're chalking your hands up and you're getting ready for the lift. There's a point in time where you start to be who you want to become, and you transform during that time. And you know, the time between that chalk box and the lift that you're going to make, regardless of what the lift is, begins this process of you becoming a different version of you. It may be a better version, a more aggressive version, or worse version. It's just a different version. And using that version, person, yourself, to do things that you otherwise probably couldn't do. So it's, you know, now I can't do the same movements I did when I was competitively lifting, but when it was max effort work and it was the squat, bench, and deadlift, and it was, you know, competitions, it was straining to make that weight, you know, to the weight that I never lifted before. It's putting yourself in a physical state where you're not scared of shit. You know, you can take the weight out and it can feel like a fucking million pounds, but in your mind, you know you can still do it. You know, there's nothing in your mind. The only thing in your mind is a void. You know, it's following through and attacking and doing what you're there to do. And it can be any challenge that's put in front of you through training that's gonna push you to the edge physically and mentally. Because there's a certain point where, for me, there's a certain point before I even begin the set that I mentally check out. I'm no longer there, I'm gone. You know, any problems I have at work is gone. Any problems I have in life is gone. You know, any adversity's gone, it's all fucking gone. You know, the only thing that's there is the fucking weight and pushing as hard as I possibly can until I can't move that fucker anymore. And many times I don't know how many repetitions it's gonna be for that set. I don't know what transpires between the time I hit the chalk and the time this set's over. It was that way when I was powerlifting. I don't know. You know, somebody has to tell me what happens because my mind is somewhere else. And that somewhere else is fucking awesome because it's nothing. You know, it's a void. It's freedom. You know, it's peace. It's my way to deal with all the bullshit. And you know, the follow-up question is, how do you put your mind in that state? Everybody's different with that as well. I'm different with that a lot of times, and it's never the same. Sometimes I'll just focus on certain events that have happened in my life, trauma, adversity, things that piss me off. So I put my mind into such a state of aggressiveness that I'll physically be shaking. And that's how I'll enter the set, you know, just a complete madness. You know, other times I'll just enter it as calm as I possibly can in a meditative state. You know, other times I'll put on some of the dumbest music that anybody would ever think somebody would listen to trying to do a heavy weight, only because I know it's gonna drive other people fucking crazy if they knew what I was listening to. Because what you listen to has nothing to do with the effort you put into the fucking weight. Nothing. So I love being able to hit a set, kill myself and end up laying on the floor. You can't breathe. People got to help you up. You piss yourself and you want to vomit. Your state is awful. And then people come over and pick up your headphones and they listen. You should be able to listen to anything, to be able to push the limits and to get to that state. Some people, need to think more positive thoughts. For me, that doesn't work. Other ways that I've gotten to that physical state is if it's an injury or if I'm coming back from an injury, I will mentally picture in my mind and focus on the worst case scenario, the worst thing that can happen. And this is advice that I give to some of our lifters even today, is when I was coming back from pec surgery, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared to bench. It took me a couple of meets to kind of get my mojo back to be able to learn how to bench. You know how I learned how to bench? Is instead of trying to focus on all the mechanics of the bench and what I had to do right, because by the time I got to the meet, that shit should be taken care of anyhow. I sat there on the deck and looked at the plates and just stared at the plates for 4 or 5 lifters out, closed my eyes, and I visualized taking the bar out of the rack, holding it for a second, and having both of my pecs tear off, and the bar come down and smash me in the fucking face, and blood flying everywhere, EMTs coming in, paramedics coming in, having to go to the hospital, and all of this vividly pictured in my mind. So that way when I got under the bar and I grabbed the bar, I was scared shitless. The fear was beyond fear. So as soon as I took it out of the rack and I held it and my elbows bent, the number one thing I wanted done is to get that fucking weight off my chest as fast as I could. Bam! PR after PR for the next year. Because I learned how to embrace the fear. I learned how to use the fear, and from that, I learned that fear can put me in that void state to where, I hit the chalk box and there's nothing. I don't think of nothing. Nothing happens. It's just empty. And now, with challenge sets and more rep type training, it's the same thing. It's just pushing to the limit and pushing as hard as you possibly can. And there's a time in your mind, everybody's human, there's a time in your mind when you're gonna wanna quit. And you do another rep, then you do another rep. And yes, it's gonna burn, yes, it's gonna hurt, yes, everything in your body's gonna tell you to quit, but you keep going, that shuts down. It stops. And your mind stops telling you anything. You just go. And within those seconds, that's what I'm talking about. That's the void.